Welcome to Real Talk with Mark West, a podcast about owning your shit and playing through life.
I do what I want. And if people would just accept that, we could get along. Come to me if you want to. I ain't scared. Shit, I bike in Chicago. I feel like I'm Neo in the Matrix, but I suck at it. I'm dodging right into the bullets, you know?
I'm your host, Mark West. Hey everyone, happy Tuesday and welcome to Real Talk with Mark West. It's the most wonderful time of the year, so why doesn't it feel like it? People don't like to talk about the anxiety, stress, and sadness that can be associated with the holidays, but it's been weighing on me, and I want to share my thoughts about how to deal with the unavoidable anxieties that go hand in hand with this time of year. Then, I'm coming clean. I don't like to name drop, but I have a secret connection to one of the most iconic voices in Hollywood, James Earl Jones. It's true, I'm sharing a little bit of his story and the lessons he taught me growing up. Finally, I'm canceling Christmas. Alexa says reindeer can't fly. So, how can Santa be real? I did some scientific investigation, and I'm debunking this Santa myth. It's all right here on Real Talk with Mark West. I've been thinking a lot about the holidays lately, mostly because I've been practicing such emotional avoidance around the subject that I nearly forgot that many will be celebrating Christmas this Saturday. My sleep schedule has been thrown out of whack, I keep losing focus, and I'm definitely feeling a lot of underlying anxiety. The holidays for me have always felt like a time where I was desperately trying to fit in and vying for acceptance. Trying to be what other people wanted me to be, and also trying to buy into this idea of happy holidays when I was painfully lonely and terribly unhappy. The holidays mean different things to different people, but one thing it is for everyone on many different levels is stressful. For some, this time may even be a triggering reminder of unhealed wounds. Anxiety and fear, especially around the holidays, is normal. It's our brain's way of protecting us from potential threats and dangers. Not everyone experiences anxiety and fear in the same way. We all form our own responses. It could look textbook, or it could look like procrastination, indecision, or forgetfulness. However it manifests, they're just different ways of protecting ourselves and expressing fear. I mentioned how in yoga they say it is important to volunteer for life, including its hardships. Now, when they say volunteer, they don't mean Habitat for Humanity volunteer. When they say volunteer, they're talking Hunger Games volunteer. Willful acceptance of the challenges ahead with a determination to see it through. Whatever has you nervous, anxious, or worked up about this holiday, from perfecting the recipe to finding contentment and joy in being alone. You cannot conquer your anxieties and fears until you face them. Combat fear with wisdom and preparedness. When you experience anxiety and fear, don't judge how you feel as negative, and don't be too quick to judge the situation as wrong or innately bad for you. Instead, ask yourself, what are you protecting yourself from? Really? That's something I find I can't always answer right away because I haven't spent time sifting through my thoughts and feelings to find the raw, underlying emotion. And 10 times out of 10, it has to do with me rather than someone or something outside of me. I'm protecting myself from failure, embarrassment, conflict, or even my own feelings. I find when I stop putting expectations on how the holidays should go, when I stop expecting a stress-free Christmas, that's when I find it actually to be the least stressful. When I accept the unexpected, assess my options, and make my decisions based on that, and not how I wanted or expected things to go, I noticed that even though this time is still stressful, I feel more prepared for it, and it's less likely to affect how I think and feel about the season. I actually start to feel a little calm. So, instead of worrying about the holidays, plan for them. I'm sure you've got images going through your mind right now of all that might happen and needs to be done. Instead of letting those thoughts work you up, plan. What is the worst case scenario? And what am I going to do so I can have the restful, meaningful holiday that I deserve without detracting from anyone else's experience? And despite what you might hear, setting healthy personal boundaries does not detract from anyone else's experience. But how do you plan? And what does that even look like? Well, I can tell you one thing I know works for me. But first, a confession. I told you I had a secret connection to the legendary man who voiced Darth Vader and Mufasa. Honestly, I hate bringing it up because I want to be my own person. But the lessons I got from my Uncle James are directly related to what I'm talking about today. All right, James Earl Jones is not my uncle. But he has been an idol of mine since I was small. Someone I've always admired for his fearlessness, confidence, and presence. A somewhat little-known fact about him is that at 90 years old, he stutters. It began early in what he called a difficult childhood. His stutter was so severe, in fact, that he barely spoke for 8 years. I've always looked up to James Earl Jones for how he mastered his stutter and is now known for speaking some of the most iconic lines in the history of film. I actually want to share a bit of his story and lessons I took from him, but also the shocking and strange parallels in which stuttering has affected the choices he made and I am currently making, accepting the reality of a speech impediment. I was reading an interview from 2010 conducted by Sarah Hartley that Daily Mail UK published on their website, where James Earl Jones shared some of his experiences growing up with a stutter, and I wanted to read a bit of it. I'll drop the link in the description if you want to go back and read it yourself. Here's what he said. I had an Uncle Randy, who passed away last year, who was my brother, really. I was the youngest grandchild, and he was the youngest child, and only 4 years older than me. Randy stuttered while we lived in Mississippi, and I feel I mocked him. I used to imitate him. I don't know whether if I was imitating him to keep him company or to embarrass him. And then I ended up stuttering myself. I feel I was cursed. When you are mute, you become a good listener. It's all one way. You appreciate the written word. You appreciate the sound. As a small child, I would communicate with my family, or at least those who didn't mind being embarrassed by my stutter or my being embarrassed. I did communicate with the animals quite freely, but then that's calling the hogs, the cows, the chickens. They don't care how you sound, they just want to hear your voice. Stuttering is painful. In Sunday school, I tried to read my lessons, and the children behind me were falling on the floor with laughter. Well, I knew I was funny. I still know why it is funny. I think stutterers are funny. And I know it's rude and politically incorrect to laugh at stutterers. But I think it is okay because I know why they're funny. They make people nervous. People think, when on earth are they going to get the word out? And so they start laughing out of their own nervousness. But by the time I got to school, my stuttering was so bad that I gave up trying to speak properly. There was another pupil who sat behind me who was also a stutterer, and the teacher, who was young, would shake him. And I'd say, let me teach him. And I took over his studies, or when he had to talk. I understood him. I understood that shaking him was not going to help. I went on to study drama at Michigan University, by which time I had gotten a grip on my stutter. Not that it will ever go. Although some people grow out of their speech impediment, I will always be a stutterer. I've learned that sometimes the synapses in your brain trip up, like stumbling on a sidewalk. Certain consonants set off a stutter, such as M, so I avoid them. But there is a great advantage for stutterers as they develop a greater vocabulary because they have to have more choices of words at their disposal. People who lusted after Marilyn Monroe had no idea she stuttered. It is the secret of her sexiness, actually. Why does stuttering make you sexy? Because it makes you unusually vulnerable. And that was true of Marilyn Monroe. Stuttering makes you sexy. Those are the real-life words of James Earl Jones, and I dare you to contradict them. But because I couldn't express myself growing up and constantly felt rejected and invalidated, I struggled with a volatile anger most of my life. Even as a child, I went from emotionless stoic to explosively angry in seconds. And the act of stuttering made me even more angry. I hated talking to people because I hated stuttering, and I hated how people could be towards me when I stuttered. Instead of coping, I became very good at hiding my feelings, hiding the way other people made me feel so they didn't think they'd gotten to me, but in actuality they did. I was modifying my behavior, but I wasn't doing the work to deal with how I was feeling about what had happened, so I compartmentalized to a dangerously unhealthy degree. I needed to address my anger and how I responded to the treatment of the world. I couldn't control how other people saw or thought of me, so I had to find a way to control myself. And it started with becoming aware of and accepting all of myself. In the end, that's who I was really angry at. I told you last week how I love to learn new things and how it started as an overcompensation, but now has become a very useful life skill that I value and appreciate. I didn't always view my intelligence as a skill or a tool to be used. I viewed it as me. People are going to think that I'm dumb for how I talk, so I want to make sure I am exactly the opposite. I am smart. So when someone would challenge me on something I knew without a doubt was correct, I'd become very angry. And I used belittling tactics in order to prove my point and show them not only are they wrong, they're in fact dumb for challenging me. Because obviously I'm smart. I would be betraying myself if I didn't show you I was right. And you are devaluing my very existence by even creating the whisper of a thought that I could be wrong. By saying I'm wrong, you're saying I'm dumb. Do you see how that sounds? You can be honest. It was a huge overreaction. Someone can disagree with you without thinking you're dumb. Being wrong does not mean you're stupid. Obviously. But actually, I thought I was. And I was afraid that underneath all these book smarts, you could still see a dumb, stuttering kid. I had internalized traumatic events instead of handling my feelings and sorting fact from fiction and throwing the fiction out with the fucking trash. Instead, I pushed it all down and focused on the negative. Then the negative became my reality. I may have been an avid learner, but my hurt prevented me from maintaining the mind of a student. I was argumentative and defensive when faced with different ideas and new information. I didn't trust anyone to teach me but me. And that's kind of dumb. By weighing different ideas and having our viewpoints challenged, we become more secure in who we are and what we actually believe. So now, smart is not a part of my identity. It's not who I am. It's just a tool I possess that I'm able to deploy. Because let's be real, as smart as I am, I still do some really stupid shit. There are still some really basic concepts that I can't grasp as quickly as others. And that's human. Who I am is a lifetime learner, able to learn from anyone and anything. And that requires humility, compassion, and mental flexibility. And that kind of person sounds more fun to me than someone who is just smart. I have my own food tour company here in Chicago, What I know about the city I live in is challenged on the regular by locals and visitors alike. I'm happy to see that I've grown to a place where that no longer affects me. I wouldn't have made it very far if I turned every situation into an argument. If you define yourself by the world you live in, it's harder to look objectively at your circumstances, and that much harder to navigate through them. So we often find ourselves stuck in the same place, the very place we tried so hard to avoid. I'm destined to be a bumbling stutterer the rest of my life. This holiday is destined to be chaotic and stressful. There's no such thing as destiny, only opportunity. In speech therapy, I learned that when I feel a stutter beginning, rather than push forward and get stuck in the loop, I stop, take a breath, and then start again. When I'm most worked up emotionally, I sometimes have to do that 2 or 3 or even 4 times before I'm able to speak. But when I pause and take a breath, I get a chance to let go of any tension and anxiety that may be causing the stutter. I get a second to evaluate. Now that I'm calm, can I continue? Or is this simply one of those problem consonants I routinely struggle with? If so, what's a different word I can use that conveys the same meaning but without that letter? If I didn't take this moment and instead got stuck in the stutter, the subsequent feelings of anger and embarrassment that come with that would only further fuel the stutter, making it even more difficult to stop once I've begun. The best tactic: at the first sign of a stutter, stop, take a breath, start again. When I'm aware of my stutter and find ways to work through it, instead of ignoring it and pretending it doesn't exist, I'm actually less likely to stutter. What's got you anxious about the holidays? And how are you going to navigate it? Give this a try. When you feel yourself becoming anxious, when your thoughts are a million miles a minute, or your face starts to get hot, or you feel the pressure behind your eyes or the lump in your throat, whatever kind of stress you face this holiday, once you become aware of it, stop, take a breath, and start again. No matter what is happening, it can wait until you've taken a moment to breathe and collect yourself. Recognize that anxiety is normal and a response to fear, our brain trying to protect us. Stop. Recognize the anxiety as fear. What are you protecting yourself from? Breathe it out. Then start again when you feel calm, remembering you've got this. You'll feel a lot better and think a lot clearer, and you may stumble upon a solution to whatever you're worried about. I understand that this is not a magic trick and it won't fix things right away, but it's a step, and I promise it helps. If next week you turn on this podcast and it hits you, oh shit, I definitely got swept up in the storm of the holidays and let anxiety get the best of me, that's okay. The moment you realize you now have another opportunity to try something different. Even if it doesn't go as planned, now you know more about what you need to do to better recognize when you're getting tripped up. You didn't fail. Those that fail are those that quit. As long as you have not quit, you have not failed. And as long as you're alive, you haven't quit. During that 2010 interview, James Earl Jones actually talked about the one time he did stutter on stage during a performance. As an actor, this part resonated with me because it's been a fear I've carried for a long time, and I've gone through huge lengths in the past to mask the many times I did stutter on stage, in front of an audience. For me, at that moment, it was the end of the world. I wanted to die. I only saw my stutter as an impediment, an obstacle, and therefore my enemy. But when it happened to him, he said, I was on stage, and the actress Mary Fickett just stood there and let me get through it. It never happened again. It wasn't because I was nervous. Something had happened in my private life that was upsetting, and I had some emotion at the surface that insisted on erupting. It may not have happened to him again, but I'm certain there will be more times in the future when I trip up and stutter during a show. even with all my techniques. And I'm okay with that. It's just emotion at the surface that insists on erupting. If people want to define me by my stutter, or can't sit with the nervousness of not knowing when I'll actually say the next word, that's got everything to do with them, and nothing to do with me. I choose to look at my situation with love and compassion. 'Cause I'm sexy as fuck. Uncle James said it. Before we wrap things up, I wanted to leave you with some holiday food for thought, and it's actually inspired by a video trending online where Alexa ruins Christmas by telling a young kid that reindeer can't fly. Have you seen that video? My Google Home gave me the same answer when I asked it. The magic of Christmas is truly gone, I guess. Well, since we out here canceling Santa Claus and dashing little kids' hopes and dreams, I wanted to take a turn. I once worked as an education specialist at a children's science museum. As part of my job, I handle after-school programming, live science demonstrations, planetarium shows, as well as teaching in the classroom. And you already know I'm a Trekkie, so I shouldn't have to tell you that I love space and science. So I ran some tests. I did some investigating to answer the question, is there a Santa Claus? Scientifically speaking, because, there's those pesky things called the laws of physics. Let's find out. I got my facts from the science and technology website Gizmodo. Alexa has already covered the first one for us. No known species of reindeer can fly. Without magic dust, that is. There are 2 billion children in the world, and by children, we mean persons under 18. But since Santa doesn't seem to fucks with the Muslim, Hindu, Jewish, and Buddhist children, and despite what James Brown said, Santa Claus don't come to the ghetto, that reduces the workload to about 378 million lucky children, at an average census rate of 3.5 children per household. That's 91.8 million homes. One presumes there's at least one good child in each home, but probably not, little shits. Santa has 31 hours of Christmas to work with, thanks to the different time zones and the rotation of the Earth, assuming he's traveling east to west, which I would if I were him, since it makes the most sense. This works out to 822.6 visits per second. For each Christian household with good children, Santa has 1/1000th of a second to park, hop out the sleigh, jump down the chimney, fill the stockings, distribute the remaining presents under the tree, eat whatever stale, dirty snacks have been left, get back up the chimney, get back into the sleigh, and move on to the next house. Assuming that each of these 91.8 million stops are evenly distributed around the Earth, which, of course, we know they're not, but for the purposes of our calculations, we will accept. We are talking about 0.78 miles to each household. A total trip of 75.5 million miles. Not counting stops to use a bathroom, plus feeding the reindeer. That don't fly. Thanks, Alexa. This means Santa's sleigh is moving at 650 miles per second. 3,000 times the speed of sound. For purposes of comparison, a conventional reindeer can run tops 15 miles per hour. Assuming that each child gets nothing more than a medium-sized Lego set, about 2 pounds, the sleigh is carrying 321,300 tons, not counting Santa, who is invariably described as overweight. On land, conventional reindeer can pull no more than 300 pounds. Even granting that flying reindeer, now ask Alexa about flying reindeer, could pull 10 times the normal amount, Santa cannot do the job with 8 or even 9. He needs 214,200 reindeer. This increases the payload, not even counting the weight of the sleigh, to 353,430 tons. Again, for comparison, this is 7 times the weight of the Titanic landing on your roof. 353,000 tons traveling at 650 miles per second creates enormous air friction. This will heat the reindeer up in the same fashion as spacecrafts re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. The lead pair of reindeer will absorb 14.3 quintillion joules of energy per second each. In short, they will burst into flames almost immediately, exposing the reindeer behind them and creating deafening sonic booms in their wake. The entire reindeer team will be vaporized in 4.26 thousandths of a second. Santa, meanwhile, will be subjected to centrifugal forces 17,500 times greater than gravity. A 250-pound Santa, which is being generous, would be pinned to the back of his sleigh by 4.3 million pounds of force. In conclusion, if Santa ever did deliver presents on Christmas Eve, he's dead now. Food for thought. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this week's episode, please feel free to share it with someone you feel could benefit. And of course, sharing on social media is always appreciated. While you're there, reach out to me and let me know how you're doing. What has you most anxious about the holidays? And do you have a plan to bring yourself back to the eye of the storm? Let me know across my social media. You can find those links at www.heymarkwest.com. And please, don't forget to follow and subscribe on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you find your podcasts. The holidays are not going to be perfectly stress-free, but that doesn't mean they can't still be full of joy. Take a lesson from such sexy people as James Earl Jones, Marilyn Monroe, and, Mark West. Stop, breathe, start again. I'll see you all here next week, where I'll be sharing with you my goals for Real Talk with Mark West and what direction this podcast will be taking in the new year. Until then, I wish you all a pleasant and meaningful holiday.